What's going on with y'all on YouTube? Now let's talk about how much do you need to make to file taxes in 2025 or 2024. So not everyone needs to file taxes or file income taxes return each year. And if your total for a year doesn't hit a certain requirement by the IRS threshold, you do not need to file federal taxes return. But you may want to file taxes anyways. There may be a benefit of you doing so. So how much do you need to file taxes? Several factors may impact whether you should file tax return or not. Now, I'm a firm believer that everyone should file tax return no matter what your income level is, just because it makes it easier to move forward to do other things like getting loans or just debating with people how much money you make a year if you have to deal with any litigation or legal matters. So you have proof every year. And if any subsidies or anything comes in that you qualify for, it will help show the government, hey, I only made 12,000 last year, and you might end up getting some help by the government, just like when Trump gave out the money to everyone for COVID period. So you don't want to miss out chance, and you don't want to rush try file for those years. So it's best to just file every year. But you don't need to file taxes if you have don't meet certain gross requirement. So some key takeaways you need to know about filing taxes. If you earn less than the standard deduction for your filing tax, you likely don't need to file tax return. Another thing is, if you don't meet the filing threshold, you may still have to file taxes if you have other types of income. For example, if you need to file if you're earning self-employment income or income from interest or dividend. So you have to compile everything together. Just because one income doesn't meet the qualification, all your income together might meet the qualification to file taxes. In most cases, if you only receive Social Security benefit, you don't need to file taxes return. And if you get Social Security benefit also get a tax-exempt income, you may need to file a return. This is because tax-exempt income may cause your Social Security benefits to be taxable. Now, dependents who earn income may or may not have to file taxes depending on several factors. For example, if the income is more than standard deduction, they typically need to file tax return. And the same thing goes for certain children who have earned income or unearned income greater than $1,300 in 2024. Now, this amount did increase to $1,350 in 2025. Now, a gross income threshold. Most taxpayers are eligible to take the standard deduction, and the standard deduction is a fixed amount the IRS lets you subtract from your income, and the standard deduction is automatically applied, and that amount you're eligible is determined by your age and filing status. The IRS sets these amounts before tax filing season. You generally see an increase in deduction to account for the inflation each year. So, the deduction you claim on your tax return determines how much your income is taxable. So if your income is less than standard deduction, you do not have to file. You don't have other income to report, you will not have to file tax return. But you see what I said, if it's less than the standard deduction, and you do not have to report any other income. So an example of income that you would need to report regardless of the amount is self-employment taxes or self-employment income. So no matter what, you have to file your self-employment income. In 2024, you don't need to file tax return if all of the following are true for you. You're under the age of 65, single filing status, and don't have special circumstance that requires you file self-employment taxes, and you earn less than $14,600, which is the standard deduction for for a single filer. Now, for 2025, the threshold moved up to $15,000. So now there is a difference between if you're single under 65 and if you're single above the age of 65. Now, if you're single below the age of 65, your income you do not have to file is $14,600, and if you're single above the age of 65, it's $16,550. Now, the head of household under age of 65 is $21,900, and the head of household above the age of 65 is $23,850. Now, if you're married filing jointly under 65, both spouses, you do not have to file if you make more or make less than $29,200. And married filing jointly, 65 and older, one person, is $30,750. So you see how the number changes with each situation. And married filing jointly is 65 or older is $32,300. Now, married filing separate, any age is $5. Qualified survival spouse is under the age of 65 is $29,200. And qualified surviving spouses 65 and older is $30,750. I'll put the chart up here so you can see it. But these are the numbers for 2024, 2025, so you can see what's going on. So now the chart that shows the amount you need to earn in 2025 filing taxes dependent on your status. So those were 2024. Now let's go over 2025. So 2025, single under age of 65 is $15,000. Single 65 or older is $17,000. Now, head of household under the age of 65 is $22,500. Head of household 65 or older is $24,500. Married filed jointly under the age of 65 is $30,000. Married filing jointly is 65 or older. One spouse is $31,600, which means one spouse. This is the one spouse that pretty much makes all the income, and the other one doesn't work. But married filing jointly means both spouses are working. It's $33,200, 65 and older. Now, do I have to file taxes on Social Security? In most cases, if your only income is Social Security, you don't need to file tax returns. And the IRS typically doesn't consider Social Security taxable income. Now, there are situations that causes you to have to report the Social Security income on tax returns. For example, if you're married and live with your spouse, but you're filing separate tax returns, you may have to report your Social Security income. This happens when your Social Security income is more than the standard deduction based on your filing status. So everything is based off your filing status. Now, here's an example when you need to file even with the tax exempt income. So in 2024, let's say you're under the age of 65. You can't be claimed as a dependent by someone else and receive a $30,000 in Social Security benefits. But you also receive a $31,000 in tax exemption interest. So $14,700 of your Social Security benefit would be taxable income. That's because the total amount is greater than the standard deduction for a single person in 2024, which is $14,600. In this case, you would need to file your tax return. Now, what are the biggest standard deduction possible? There's a bunch of different ones, but generally, several reasons for your standard deduction could be higher. For example, if you're at least 65 or older, you get an increase in your standard deduction, and you can also get an increased standard deduction if you're blind, if your spouse is also at least 65, and your spouse is blind. Now, do minors have to file taxes? Let's break it down when it comes to minors. No matter how young you are, if you are earning a certain amount of money, you have to file tax. It doesn't matter if you're under the age of 18, you're gonna have to file taxes. If you make more than $14,600, they have to file taxes. Now, the filing threshold for unearned income is like interest your children earn from savings account is $1,300 in 2024. So it depends on how much money they make, but you should always ask a tax professional. Now, are you required to file taxes if you don't owe? I'll tell you, you're not required to file taxes, but there are years when you might not require to file your tax return, but you may want to do so anyways. If you have federal tax withheld from your paychecks, you could potentially qualify for a tax refund. So at the end of the day, if you are going to make money in the United States, I tell you file taxes, because there is always a possibility that, like for example, Trump will give another $1,400 stimulus check, and it requires you to file your taxes to get that money. You don't want to miss the chance and run around and get that. Or two, you might get a tax refund. So don't miss the opportunity and lose out on money just because you get lazy, don't want to file. Yes, you might not have to file your tax return, but I always recommend you file your tax return just because you never know what's going to happen, and it's always good to have your documents in order. So that's my opinion on the standard deduction, or that's what the IRS stated in 2025, in my opinion about it. Like and subscribe to my video if you want to see more of these videos.